So today is a special treat for our church, special treat for me. We are, if you don't know, we are actually a part of a larger connection of churches called the Free Methodist Church. And the Free Methodist Church provides us with theological oversight, so we don't just go off and create our own set of new ideas. They also provide us with financial oversight, and they just make sure that we're not going crazy, all right? And I'm pretty sure that our hope is that we don't cause them a lot of stress. You'll find out in a minute, but today we have our bishop, my bishop, and so in my world, my bosses are Jesus, then Sherry, then my bishop, and my bishop is here today. And when he asked if he was going to be in the area and asked if he could be a part of our church, I said, absolutely. We're doing a series called Killing the Monster, right? We're talking about this monster that lives within us. And I asked him if he had a specific subject he would want to talk about, and he said fear would be the thing. And so he's going to talk to us about that. Now let me just tell you a little bit about Bishop David Roller. He and his wife Yvonne are here with us today. They represent Christ as well as anyone I know. Bishop Roller actually oversees all of Europe and all of Latin America, as well as the entire East Coast. So he has a lot of responsibility, a lot of churches that he oversees. A very humble man. God has gifted him and his wife, and they love Jesus well. And super excited to have Bishop Roller here today. So Bishop, if you want to come up, let's give him a hand. And excited to hear him talk today.
Yvonne and I have wanted to be with you for a long time, and we finally made it. So I just didn't realize how much we'd love you. And it's good to see Pastor Paul and Sherry here in their spot. You know, we've known each other for a long time, but to be here and to worship with you today is a great thing. We've been looking forward to. So the monster today is fear, which actually I happen to be an expert on. We lived in the desert for a long time, like 16 years in the Sonoran Desert, which is the desert that goes up into Arizona and down into Mexico. The state is called Sonora in northern Mexico, so that's why it's called the Sonoran Desert, which has a lot of rattlesnakes. And I've killed 16 rattlesnakes. I kind of got to be an expert at it. And there was a time when I had bad dreams about rattlesnakes. You know, so we're all big and brave and everything all the time because we're adults, right? But when we go to bed and our head's on the pillow, some of the fears, you know, we all turn into children again, don't we? So I'm afraid of rattlesnakes and sharks and bears and mean people. They're really a lot more mean people than there are bears and sharks and snakes. So what I want to do this morning is just tell you, honey, did I leave my Bible there? I just want to tell you a story from this book. Thanks, honey. This is Yvonne. You can see Yvonne. We are just celebrating 40 years of marriage, and it's been great. And yeah. So I'm not going to preach kind of in any traditional sense, but you know, I want you to see God a little more clearly. I want you to see yourself a little more clearly. And let me suggest that this book, the Bible, is a collection of stories about, mainly about messed up people, right? I mean, there aren't a lot of heroes in here, with the exception of Jesus and a few heroes scattered around, but a lot of it is stories about people like us. So I'm going to tell you one of these stories about a man who was destroyed by fear. So, you know, before there was anything, there was nothing, obviously. Everything was dark. It was black. It was an abyss. And then a voice rang out that's called light. He called light out of the darkness. And then he separated the water above from the water below. And then he created things like dry, and out of the dry he called green stuff that grows. And out of the green stuff that grows, you know, then he created animals, all kinds of animals. He threw the stars in the skies. I mean, I'm not going through it piece by piece, but you know, he made it all, right? and it was really, really good. Then he made a man and he made a woman. They were naked. It was perfect. They ate all the fruit they wanted. They had all the food they wanted. And then they messed it up by breaking the one rule that there was. So after Adam and Eve, then comes this time where it all goes downhill, and God finds one good man named Noah. He says, I'm going to wipe them all out except for you and your family and the animals. He puts them in an ark, and then he sends the water from above and the water from below. And then after Noah, then you've got the Tower of Babel, where they are all trying to build this great monument to themselves. And God says, no, we're not going to do that. So they woke up one morning, and one guy said, good morning, and the other guy said, bonjour, and the next guy said, buenos dias, and the next guy said, arigato, and the next guy said, bon dia, and it went on and on and on because they're all talking different languages. He said, hand me a hammer to build this tower, and he gave him a jelly donut, and that was the end of the tower. So then the Tower of Babel doesn't work out. Then God calls a man named Abram. And he says, I want to take you on a journey to a new place. I want to take you to a new land. Come on. You up for a journey? You up for a trip? Abram said, yeah, I'll go. A few other people said, yeah, we'll go. So they followed God to a new place. They settled there. Abram and his wife Sarah had a son of promise named Isaac. Isaac and his wife Rebekah had a son of promise named Jacob. Jacob he had 2 wives and 2 servants by whom he had children also. So Jacob by 4 women had 12 sons and 1 daughter named Dinah, who was in the kitchen strumming on the old banjo. Nobody knows why. That part's not in the Bible. So he has 12 sons and 1 daughter. The oldest one is named Reuben and gets a sandwich named after him. The next one is named Simeon and has monkeys named after him. The third one is named, Levi, and has jeans named after him. The fourth one is, help me out, Judah. The next to the last one is named Joseph. And the 12th son is named Benjamin. He's like the runt of the litter. He's the little one. He's the little one. Well, Joseph is this uppity brother. He gets sold by his own brothers. Human trafficking in the Old Testament. He is sold by his own brothers down to a neighboring country called Egypt. He's thrown in jail there, but because God is with him, he becomes a very prominent official in Egypt. And so much so that he devises a plan for responding, kind of a FEMA plan for responding to the crisis of famine, which is over all that part of the earth. So much so that his brothers and father come down from up north where they're at, down in Egypt. He feeds them, and then he says, hey, I'm your brother, and they all live there for 430 years in Egypt until they are actually reduced to being slaves in Egypt. God raises up a strong man named Moses. Moses goes down to Tahrir Square in the center of Cairo and says, let my people go. Pharaoh says, no, I'm not going to let your people go. He brings 10 signs down for his protest march. Each sign is bigger and bigger. We call them the 10 plagues. At the end of it all, the Hebrew people, there's the great escape, this great jailbreak. All the people of Israel, along with a motley crew of other slaves, all stream out of Egypt. Charlton Heston leads the crew. I'm mixing up things, but you get the idea. Leads the crew across the Red Sea, on dry land. They get to the other side. There's Moses. Here are now perhaps 2 million people out in the desert. They because of their disobedience, they wander around in the desert for 40 years until finally Moses died. His successor named Joshua, now on the plains of Moab, across the Jordan River, ready to go into the promised land, the land that Abraham had gone to. They're ready to go back in there and retake their promised land. And Joshua leads the children of Israel now across the Jordan River into the promised land. They get in there, they walk around the town of Jericho, the walls fall down, and they start to conquer this land which was theirs. They have no king. They just have Joshua. Well, after a number of years of this, where they had kind of community rulers that they called judges, women like Deborah, men like Gideon, and Samson. Well, the last of these judges was a man named Samuel. And this is the setting where the story happens. In the southern part of Israel, there is a father named Kish, with a K, Kish, who has lost his donkeys. The donkeys have wandered off. So he calls his son. I don't know if you've ever lost donkeys, probably not. But if you've lost donkeys and you need someone to find them, you want someone else to do them because it's not a pleasant task tracking donkeys in the desert. I have tracked lost goats in the desert, and they're difficult to track. All you have to look for are hoof prints as well as scat. That's all you have to go on. It's not a pleasant task. So here, Kish calls his son, named Saul. And he says, Saul, come, the donkeys are lost. I want you to go look for them. Saul, being a clever lad, calls his servant and says, hey, let's go together. So together they set out. They look for the donkeys. One thing we know about this man named Saul is that his father was named Kish, and he was of this littlest tribe, the runt tribe called Benjamin. It was important to them to know which tribe they were from. He was from Benjamin, which was not an important tribe. He was not raised to think that he was somebody special. But he grew. He was like basketball tall. He was head and shoulders above everybody else. So like if they all stood up, he was up high, which I know nothing about. And everybody else was like down here, which I know a lot about. So he and his servant go out, and they're looking for the donkeys. Day 1, they look high. Day 2, they look low. Day 3, they look in between. Finally, Saul says to the servant, you know what? My father is probably now more concerned about us than about the donkeys. Maybe we better head home. It's been 3 days. So the servant says, I got an idea. Right around here, there is a town, and in the town, there is a seer, one who sees. There is a prophet. There is a one who sees more than the things that are physical. Let's go ask the seer where the donkeys are. Saul's like, that's a great idea, but I don't have any money because one must pay a seer. The servant says, don't worry, I have a quarter of a shekel. That will be enough. Saul says, yeah, that's good, let's go. So they go to the town where they know the seer is. Just as they're getting to the edge of this town, some young women come out. They're carrying clay jars upon their head, empty jars. They're going to the well to fetch water for the chores. So these 2 men see the women coming out, and they say, excuse us, ladies, could you tell us if the seer is in? They said, you're in luck. Not only is he here, today is a day of feasting, and you guys are just in time for the feast. If you hurry, you'll catch him. So they go up, they get just inside the walls of the city. Here comes a man toward them, and Saul said to this man, excuse me, sir, can you tell me where the seer might be, the one who sees? Not knowing that man was the seer. That seer's name was Samuel, the one I already mentioned, the last of the judges, the last of the community rulers, a great prophet, a great seer. And what Saul and his servant did not know was that the day before, Samuel had heard the voice of God. And God had said to him, I am going to send to you the one I have selected to be king. The people have rejected me. They have rejected me because they are afraid of the Philistines, our neighbors. And they want to have a king like all the other nations around them. They don't want to believe in a God that they can't see. They want a real solid God. They want a king they can see. So God had told Samuel, tomorrow I'm going to send you a fella. And now when Saul and his servant saw Samuel, there are a lot of S's. When Saul and his servant saw Samuel, Samuel knew that this was the one that God had selected to be the first king of the Hebrew people. So Saul said to Samuel, do you know where the seer is? And Samuel said, yes, I am the seer, and you're just in time for the festival. You fellas head on up there to the hilltop where we're going to have the feast. Wait for me there. Then he turned to Saul and he said, I know you. You are the one upon whom the hopes of all Israel rest. And Saul says, me? I'm just looking for lost donkeys. You know, so my job is to find the donkeys and take them home. You obviously do not know who I am. To suggest that I could be someone is a mistake. You don't get me. You don't know my limitations. First of all, he said, I'm from the tribe of Benjamin, right? We all know what that means. Second of all, I'm from the clan of Matri, which is an insignificant clan in an insignificant tribe. And thirdly, I'm from the family of Kish, which is an insignificant family in an insignificant clan in an insignificant tribe, so I'm not the guy. Samuel said, hey, go on up to the feast. We'll talk up there. So they go up to the feast. There are about 30 people there. They sit down. Samuel's here, Saul's here. And Samuel calls the cook in. He says, remember that cut of meat I told you to hold for the special person? The cook's like, yeah. Well, bring it in. This is the guy. So the cook goes and he brings in a portion of the leg of the animal, of the beef. He brings in the slab of beef and he puts it down in front of Saul. And everybody gasps. This is the cut of meat reserved for the priest. He eats it. It's meat. He eats it. He's been out looking for donkeys. He's hungry. The feast goes on. The feast winds down. Samuel invites Saul down to his house. Let's go up on the roof. So they go up on the roof and they talk all night. We don't know what they talked about. We do know that when morning came, Samuel went down to Saul and he said, okay, I'm going to send you on your way. He goes down. He gets down to the city gates. It's early morning, just when the sun's starting to come up. They've got a long trip ahead of them. And Samuel says to Saul, send your servant on ahead. The servant goes on ahead. Now the two of them are alone. Samuel has hidden in his cloak a flask, like a goat skin of oil. Not a little vial of oil, a lot of oil. He takes it out, and while too tall Saul stands there, he probably has to have him kneel down to even reach him. He takes the oil and he dumps it on the head of Saul. Oil, just this slick olive oil down over his hair, drips off his nose, down into his beard. His clothes are now impregnated with the oil of the olive. That smell, that acrid smell, that sweet smell of olive oil. Samuel said to him, you have been selected to be the leader of the inheritance of God. And here's how you know this is true. You will have 3 confirmations today. The first confirmation is, as you're walking home, you will see 2 men, and they will say, hey, we saw your father, and he found the donkeys. Don't worry about them. But that's not enough. I want you to know. 3 times. The second thing he said you'll see is you'll see 3 men walking toward you. One of the men will have 3 goats. Be carrying 3 goats. Another man will have 2 loaves of bread. Another man will have a flask of wine. And the one with the 3 loaves of bread will give you 2 of them. This is confirmation. So you know what I'm telling you is true. The third thing that will happen is when you get to the town of Gibeah, which is an outpost of the enemy, it's an outpost of the Philistines. When you get there, you're going to see a group of men coming down. These men are prophets. They are in like a trance. They are like saying the words of God. And when they come by you, The Spirit of God is going to move from them onto you. You are going to be changed into a new person. And you are going to speak my words. You're going to prophesy. These three things will confirm for you that what I have told you about you is true. Go. So Saul left Samuel, caught up with the servant, got home. Sure enough, all these things happened on the road. They saw the people who said the donkeys have been found. They saw the guy who gave them the loaves of bread. And the Spirit of the Lord, the Spirit of God, came over him. Changed who he was. Made him ready to be the king. 7 days later, which was the date Samuel and Saul had agreed upon. Samuel, who, like I said, is the head judge of all of Israel at this time. Samuel calls all Israel together. And he says, friends, countrymen, you have rejected God and his leadership. You have been so afraid of the Philistines that you have demanded a king like all the nations around you. And God has said, all right, we'll give them a king. So today, now he's talking to everybody, there are thousands and thousands of people there. Today, God will select, he will draw out from among you the leader he has chosen. Here's how we're going to do it. We're going to have you pass by, tribe by tribe. So here comes the tribe of Reuben. They all march by. They're not chosen. Here comes the tribe of Simeon. They all march by. Here comes the tribe of Levi. They're not chosen as they march by. Here comes the tribe of Judah. They're not chosen as they march by. 1 tribe, 2 tribe, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. The tribe of Joseph. They march by. And people are like, we're running out of tribes here, folks. It can't be Benjamin. Here comes the last and final tribe, the tribe of Benjamin. They march by. And Samuel recognizes, we don't know exactly how, but he recognizes these are the people, the tribe of Benjamin. Out of this group comes our king. So everybody's like, yay, it's Benjamin! And they're all high-fiving. We're the guys. Okay, Samuel says, now, tribe of Benjamin, come by clan by clan. They go by clan, and the clan of Matri is chosen. Okay, now we've got it narrowed down. It's the clan of Matri. They're chosen. It's an honor, but also now there's a nervousness among the tribe of Matri. Who is going to lead us against the Philistines? These bloodthirsty neighbors who inhabit the coast. These coastal dwellers. Who's going to lead us? Now it's more fun to watch the selection process if you've already been eliminated. But if you're in the tribe of Matri, now you're getting yikes. So the clan of Matri passes by. The family of Kish is chosen. And now they're just Kish and his sons. Through a selection process, we don't know how it happens. But Samuel calls out, it is Saul. And everybody's like, long live King Saul! Long live King Saul! There's one little problem. Saul's not there. So everybody's chanting, long live King Saul. And they're like, where is this king of ours? He's not there. Everybody's, long live the king. He's not there. Samuel has to ask God, where's your guy? You know, we queued him up. The band played. Everything was ready. We gave him his line. And you're like, da-da-da-da-da-da, King Saul. And he's not in the green room. Where is he? So Samuel asks God, where's your guy? God says, he's hiding. He's hiding. He's hiding. He's hiding. He's hiding among the suitcases. This is exactly what happened. God said he's hiding among the suitcases. Not exactly the kind of beginning you want, is it? For the one who's going to lead you in battle. He's hiding out there. You know, out there where all the camels are kneeling down. Out there where the young people are collecting sticks to cook the evening supper, where we left all our bundles. And here is a man head and shoulders above everyone else, crouched down, trembling in fear. Called to be a king, hiding among the suitcases. They run and get him. They pull him forward onto the stage. And everyone chants, "Long live the king," but not with quite the same enthusiasm, knowing that their new king was hiding among the luggage. Well, he becomes their king. And his whole tenure it's like he has a ball and chain around his leg called fear. Everything he tries to do is undercut by the fear that he carries with him. He's afraid of the Philistines. He's afraid of his enemies, and he's afraid of his friends. He's afraid to wait. But you think of leaders, well, let's go, 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 go. But sometimes you've got to wait. And he didn't know how to wait. He got in big trouble. It's another story I can't tell you today, but he got in big trouble because he didn't wait long enough once. God finally said, he's not working out. We need a new guy. This time we need someone who has a bit of courage in his heart. He sent a giant Philistine. You'll remember his name, Goliath. He sent this giant Philistine. And who was the giant Hebrew? It was Saul. But God found a young, short guy. I like this part of the story. He found a young, short guy who said, "Are you serious? Saul, you're afraid of this guy? Don't you get it? We have God with us. Why are you paralyzed by fear when this Goliath giant comes out and challenges you? Let me at him." So King Saul tries to give all his armor to this stripling of a lad, this boy named David, who was from a town called Bethlehem, which comes up later in the story. And David says, "I can't wear this armor. I don't need this armor because I am not bound up by fear. Let me at him." David goes out. You remember, he's got his slingshot. Not this kind of slingshot, but this kind of slingshot. He goes out. He gets 5 stones. He runs out to meet this Goliath. Unhampered, unfettered by fear. Launches the rock, knocks the giant out. David runs up with a sword, and in this gruesome act, severs his head, carries it back in triumph. And David becomes the great king. The king with a courageous heart. From David, there are like 1,000 years, though. David's the great king. He becomes the golden period of the Hebrews' history. Oh, remember when David was king. So for 1,000 years, mothers and fathers put their children to bed at night, saying, honey, pretty soon, another courageous king is going to be born in that same little town called Bethlehem. Someday, sweetheart, go to sleep, sweetheart, someday, another king of courage is going to come. Go to sleep, my precious, someday. And for 1,000 years, they told the story of David and his courage until one Christmas Eve, it happened. The one who had said, light, inserted himself into this mess that we have made of the world. And he came to lift the curse which has settled upon us all. The curse of brokenness, the curse of death. That one born in Jerusalem, we just sang about him. He lived. He was killed. Perhaps more accurately, he gave himself to fix it. He rose in triumph from the grave. You sang about this a few weeks ago. He ascended into the cloud that he had come from. And he left a motley crew of believers behind, one of the most fervent of whom was a man named Stephen, who the enemies killed by throwing stones at him, so many stones that they literally killed him. As they were killing that man, Stephen, to one side stood another man. And he held the coats of those who picked up the stones and killed Stephen. The man who held the coats was a bit of a coward. He didn't throw the stones, he just held the coats of those who killed him. Do you know what his name was? Saul. Do you remember what tribe he was from? The tribe of Benjamin. Bookends of a story. This Saul, who held the cloaks of the tribe of Benjamin, much like the first Saul. Do you remember when the prophets came down and the Spirit of God transformed him? Well, this Saul, the new one who held the cloaks, he was on a road to Damascus when God appeared to him. And God knocked him to the ground. And God transformed him too. And after that transformation, he took on a new name to say he was so changed. He remembered his namesake, the old Saul. He remembered that the old Saul had had his life changed, but then had reverted back to a life of fear. And this one said, I'm not going to do that mistake again. And the new Saul said, I'm taking a new name. My name is now Paul. Good name, isn't it? Call me Paul, not Saul. And this Paul, the Apostle Paul, is probably the main reason we're all here this morning. He became the great, courageous missionary, shipwrecked, beaten multiple times, imprisoned multiple times, a man who had an abundance of courage. I mean, he had so much courage, he was sometimes foolish in taking the gospel anywhere and everywhere. Just to wrap the story up. One time he was shipwrecked. This new Saul, called Paul, went out to gather some wood for the fire. Brought it in, threw it on the fire, and the fire drove out of the wood he had just thrown. The fire drove a snake out, and the snake bit him. I don't think it was a rattlesnake, but it was a venomous snake. And so here he is, the snake hanging from his hand. So me, I would freak out. Like I said, I've killed 16 rattlesnakes. I've never been bit by one, and I don't intend to be bitten by one. But if I am bitten, I'm going to start panicking. Saul, named Paul, doesn't panic. He just throws the snake off into the fire. He somehow had gotten so into the reality that he had been transformed by God and called by God to a task, that God was going to watch over him, that nothing bad could happen to him. Now, didn't I just tell you he had been beaten? Okay, but that wasn't bad. I mean, everything that happened to him, he saw in the context of the big story that God was writing. And God's big story is good. And Paul was willing, okay, so if I'm supposed to die by a snake bite, that's fine. God be glorified. The second Saul found a way to let the assurance of what God was doing be the bigger story in which he could couch his own story, and he overcame his fear. Pastor.
Let's pray. Father, as the band is coming, we're going to just say to you that we want to be that second Paul. And there was a line that Pastor David used that resonated with my heart. He said, we've been called to be kings, and yet we're hiding amongst the suitcases. And my guess would be, Lord, that in this room are men that you've called to be kings that have yet to deliver because of some form of fear. Or maybe there's a lady in here who you have called to be a queen, and yet she is hiding among the suitcases because of some fear. I pray today, Father, that we would have the courage of the second Saul, the one who lined up behind Jesus and passionately followed your leadership and was able to endure all kinds of craziness throughout life because of the courage he had that came from following you. Father, forgive us for allowing fear to drive our decisions. Forgive us for hiding away from the good things that you call us to. Forgive us, Lord, for failing to step out and adventure and move towards the place that you want us to go to because of our fear. I pray today, Lord, in this room, in these next moments, Lord, that decisions would be made, that men and women would decide that today I'm going to step out and follow Jesus. I will not allow my fear to keep me hidden among the suitcases any longer. But today I'll allow you to build something glorious out of the ruins of my life, Lord Jesus. And Father, I just pray that as we sing these words, that you will do something in our heart as we make a decision to become men and women who line up behind Jesus and follow you with all of our hearts and minds in Christ's name. Amen.